My name is Rashmi Mandloi, and I lead the growth engine for LeadUP Universe, which is an edtech firm where we look at unleashing the potential of students at one angle and the institutions in the other. So the whole idea is partnering with everybody together in sort of building C-suite leaders. So today's session, in fact, just wanted to give a context. Organizations have by and large met the challenges of the COVID crisis. But as we are moving towards imagining a post-pandemic era, a management system based on old rules, old hierarchy, etc., will no longer be effective. Taking its place should be a model that is more flexible, more responsible, built around connections, of course, automation, lower cost, and of course, an eye on the demographic shifts, because now we are in a very, very open world, and especially now with COVID, everything is happening virtually as well. And HR plays a key role in developing, reinforcing, and changing this need. Knowing that HR strategy plays a truly foundational role in how business and workforce evolve, adapt, and transform over time, it's critical to align around the right business strategies in partnership with the CEO in propelling the organization and its people forward. So the plenary will get a perspective from the business leaders on how they foresee the role of HR to partner with business and their expectations from the CHRO. The CHRO will be able to give a perspective on balancing the tightrope walk of business ask and people leader. We will also examine how it is imperative to invest in ourselves to truly get us ready to take on the challenges faced by the changing market dynamics. Okay, suddenly there is some issue. Do you all hear some noise coming? So please give me 1 second. Let me just put in my earphones. Really sorry for this. I'm really sorry for this. Can you all hear me properly now?
Yes, yes. We could hear you even earlier, Rashmi.
Yes.
Okay. Preeti, I can't hear you. Okay.
You're
can't
fine
hear me?
without the headphones too.
You were fine without it. Can you not hear me now?
Just chat her, tell her that she
Can you hear me, Renu?
Yes, I can. I think all of us are audible.
Rashmi, you were fine. Then put her on chat.
yeah, I'm just typing this on chat that she's fine.
Yeah.
I think she's not able to hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, I think when I'm putting on the earphones, I'm not able to hear you all. I'm really
sorry.
sorry.
You're fine, ma'am.
But you're fine, Rashmi. We could hear you.
Your voice and
but I also need to hear you all. If I'm not able to hear you, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So really, really sorry for this. I'm really sorry for the sudden thing which has come on top from my neighbor's side. I'm really sorry for that. So, so I just want to, before, just wanted to introduce the panel so that we get going with it. First, I would like to introduce Renu. Renu is a business leader with about 25 years of India and international leadership experience in strategy, operations, finance, and people management. She led Grohe India as CEO for 5 years before taking over the region in 2017, based out of Dubai, leading Grohe Middle East, Levant, Turkey, Israel, North and West Africa region. Renu is a postgraduate in business management, specializing in finance and international business, and has worked across a gamut of industries, including building materials, FMCG, office automation, IT, and telecom. And she joins us from Dubai. Thank you, Renu, for coming to this esteemed panel. Very, very excited to have you on board. Next, I would like to introduce Preeti Reddy. Preeti Reddy is the CEO of Kantar's Insights Division in South Asia. For a record 5th time in a row, Preeti has been rated as the top 15 most influential women of 2020 in media, marketing, and advertising. She has worked with Kantar over the last about 30 plus years, including stints as CEO in Colombo, and then moved to Delhi with IMRB, and took over as CEO of IMRB, and then took over as the CEO of Insights Division, South Asia. She says it's been a combination of hard work and serendipity that got me here, which I suspect is the case with most people. So yes, Preeti, it is, and we would love to know more about your experience in detail. Welcome, Preeti. Okay, so now let's move to Samik. Samik Basu is a collaborative HR leader with 25 years of diverse experience in reputed CPG companies, including Unilever and PepsiCo, across multiple geographies and cultures in India and Asia Pacific. His passion is to help organizations deliver sustained business results by building, inspiring, and coaching diverse teams to excel and leverage the full potential. His specific areas of interest and specialization in the field of HR include strategic business partnerships, execution excellence, change management, employer relations, organization design and effectiveness, and leadership development. He is currently the Chief Human Resource Officer at Hindalco, Aditya Birla Group company. Welcome, Samik. And Samik, I've been knowing him for the last 10 years since the time he was in Pepsi, and it's always so great to hear from you, Samik. Thank you for being on the panel. We also have an academician here amongst us, and that's Professor Gurunathan. He's an associate professor at XLRI since 2004. Professor Gurunathan has been closely associated in building and nurturing leaders, especially senior executive professionals via various courses, including the PGED HR program for CHRs. So welcome, Professor Gurunathan. It's a pleasure to have an academic perspective in this business kind of a discussion.
Thank you.
So today's session, so for all the participants who've come here, I mean, we'd like to, sort of take your questions. So please use the chat mode. If we would want to make it more interactive. Also, we would like to, sort of have the conversation more conversational rather than, one person talking. So, there will be a lot of challenging of status quo. And there's a lot of candid sharing which needs to happen. And I think everybody can, put their point of view across. There is nothing a right or a wrong answer. I think we can all debate and discuss around this. So we've got two CEOs here, one CHRO and one academic a person out here. So I think it's a great discussion to start off with. So let me start with the CEO leaders. So we're talking about HR through the lens of the CEOs. And Preeti and Renu, this question is marked to you. So how do you see the changing face of HR? Both of you have 25 plus years of experience. So have you all seen the changing face of HR and what is it that you're seeing right now? Preeti, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think HR has been changing through its history. It's not and I know XLRI was one of the first institutions that instituted human resource management. But, over the years, HR has evolved, all credit to them. The pace of change has accelerated in the last 2 years because of the, watershed moment that we're going through and the need for, and the completely new operating models that we are seeing. And I think what is happening is that the demands on HR are become manifold. The demands on HR have, the need for greater agility, for more fungibility, have become even more now. I think there is HR over the years has understood, has appreciated that they need to understand business if they have to be true business partners. But it's never more real than now. And the most important, I think even more important than understanding business, is that HR has for a long time been deemed responsible for the culture of the organization. When you say what is the culture that your organization has, and you just look at your HR person and say, it's all up to you, now do that. I think HR has thankfully also learned to stand up for itself and say it's not only me. There are other, if I have to learn business, you have to learn culture and you have to learn talent management. It's not only an HR function. I think those are the changes that I'm seeing, and the pandemic, one part of it, it just made it harder, and it just made the need for this coming together tougher, or need more accentuated. But really, that's what I have seen.
Thank you, Preeti. I mean, demands are manifold. HR has learned to stand up for itself. Renu, do you believe that? What Preeti is saying?
Absolutely. I think I would say that. I mean, the classical role of, HR tailing the business and now being like a trusted lieutenant, it's completely changed, right? So I remember, because I was from finance, and I did at least, 14 to 15 years of finance and CFO role before I moved as a CEO. We used to always say, oh, CFO is the right-hand person. That's not true anymore, right? It's CFO and CHRO. And I think that makes like a dream team if all three of them, work together. And that's why I think the demand, and I guess that's for also now the upcoming courses, and I'm sure, Professor Guru can throw light, but then I think the education has to start, steering HR management students also to be part of business discussions, understand business a lot. And I say that, and I endorse Preeti on this completely, that, culture is, they're not just the guardians of culture, right? Culture is all pervasive. So they have to only work with functional leaders, business leaders, to make sure that the culture is spread, understood, and, embodied, lived, right? So it's not only HR. But I think it's just gone beyond the org structure, the recruitment. It's gone into like a right place, right people mode, right? The businesses are agile. We are moving very fast. We want to react to change, or sometimes be actually, preemptive to change, and make sure that your org structure responds to that. So all of that now has become a thinking strategy box, which is the HR function. And I think we have really come a long way from when you see them as backbenchers, right? So that's what I.
So, Samik, over to you. The business leaders are saying that HR was perceived as a backbencher. They're now sort of truly coming on their own. So, do you believe that you've been an HR leader for the last almost two decades and a half? So, how would you see that?
Actually, 3 decades and
3 decades. Okay, 92 Excel batch, right? Yeah. No, okay.
Nevertheless, yeah. So completely agree. I just wanted to bring another maybe reason as to why this is happening on the table, and that is because the importance of people in driving competitive advantage is also becoming sharper and clearer. So, in any business strategy, the talent strategy is now also more central than perhaps it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And if talent has to be the differentiator, then culture, how you attract, retain, and develop the best talent, move them around, grow them, all of that becomes that much more critical. So I would say that's another reason why what is happening, because the talent market has become more competitive. Opportunities are galore for young people, and just before this, Renu and I were talking about the current situation in India, and while the pandemic has had its impact, there is still a lot of movement that's happening both in and out, and there are organizations who are even using this opportunity to get in better talent, restructure, etc., that they do. So that's why the partnership between the HR function and the business has become even more critical and strategic at this point of time. And therefore, for the HR function, I think as CHROs, what has become a big imperative for us is to make the function truly agile. I mean, the need to be customer-centric was always there. The need to, be able to balance the needs of people and business was always there. Those are not new. But I think now having an HR function which is truly responsive and agile and truly able to keep up with the pace of business change, and sometimes, for competitive advantage, move even faster and be able to take more and more data-based decisions. I mean, with digital, it is not only in operations or in marketing that you need to take more data-based decisions. Even when it comes to people, the need to sort of be able to look at data and take people decisions, whether it is talent related, whether it is rewards related, whether it is recruitment related, that is becoming very, very key. And I think HR functions to be successful today and tomorrow have to sort of align themselves more and more in that direction.
Thank you, Samik. So you did say that, talent market has become competitive and there are lots of opportunities and HR needs to truly partner with business and everybody is also understanding that. So Professor Guru, question back to you. From an academic perspective, can a HR partnership with the business, can it be taught in the class? And if it is, how is XLRI doing it?
That's what we've been teaching for the last 10 years or so. But see, but your question is interesting in the sense, let me just agree with the panelists to say that in general, the ask of HR has gone up substantially. There's a lot of expectation that has shot up. It is not very clear as to what those expectations are. Sometimes it seems to be more from the business side of the alignment aspects. Sometimes sometimes the expectation from the employees are also rising up. They are saying, come on, I mean, what is your role there? What are you doing? You are supposed to help us out. So there's a ask in general has gone up. Now with the last at least a decade or so, our way we are essentially teaching also is also changing. That we are starting from business and then going to HR. So before we used to be, the way we used to teach would be from the HR and then, then we'll talk about alignment. Now we are telling our students, they have to be sound knowledge of business is very basic now. Of course, they have to be an expert in their field of human resource management, but sound knowledge of business, because whatever they do, the context invariably is the context of industry, the strategy context, and therefore some solutions may not even make sense in a different context. So each time we say something to them, the context is becoming very profound. Maybe 15, 20 years back, I'm thinking we were probably getting away with what is called a professional HR, right? This is what you do. This is the right thing to do, period. Now we are more concerned in saying this is the right thing to do, given this context, given this particular area. So the context is becoming so profound, and that is changing the way we are essentially discussing. So that's fun. That's fun because we are able to discuss various varieties of stuff, but that's also challenging because the student is looking at saying, so what is the right answer actually? And we don't actually have one because each time the context changes, and then so that's the challenge.
So isn't it then necessary then to have a lot more practitioner people coming and sort of, working together with academic? And do you think that is the way forward because most of the work happens in the organizations.
Yeah.
And the learning and the academic input is coming from the institute. So how do we have that?
So let's be honest. The learning comes from what practitioners do, right? Each time I interact with them, I talk to them. My course is enriched by talking to them. If they are not doing, if I don't understand what they are doing, there's no way I can essentially teach anything actually. So unlike the other sciences, I think management, we constantly are asking people, so what are you doing actually? So if sometimes they may think they're doing something very simple, but you realize it's far more profound because they have embedded many aspects of it in their simple solution. So one, we constantly keep talking to practitioners. We learn a lot more from them. Two, of course, we take a particular aspect or an activity from them and conceptualize it. Try to see, is there an underlying concept behind it? Is there an underlying theoretical aspect of it? So yes, we do. So what happens is, yes, if you should give you a short answer, we do need a lot of you people talking to my students. As much as you're talking to me, I want you people to talk to my students, and I'll invite you to talk to my students. Two, it is also my job to make sense of what you are talking to my students, because you will be talking from a context and you may not be aware of that context, but you'll be embedded. You are so deeply embedded in that context. And it's my job to tell my student, this is how, when it will work, or what are the probable areas where it will change, etc. So yes, for the XLRI, thanks to, we have got wonderful alumni to come back and talk to my students whenever we ask them to. And that's very important in management teaching, because the students simply is going to ask all of the time. So fine, that's a great thing. Will it work? And I need to come back to will
it work? So Preeti and Renu, question back to you. So what are you, we are saying that, okay, the HR function has changing, is evolving. And there's a lot of people ask. In fact, Renu was saying that there's going to be, the HR is still they are not just the custodians of culture, and everybody is. So in this context, what is your expectation from the HR leader in this new, how would you want your CHRO to be? What are the major factors or the major strengths that you would want in your CHRO?
Should I go first?
Yes, Preeti.
Well, I think, with all due respect to my CHRO, I think we have some of it, a lot of it. you know, I think the expectation is, and as Samik was saying, I find that the ability to take data-based decisions needs really strengthening. You know, when you have your CFO, that you know that the CFO will be able to read a balance sheet, a profit and loss account. You know that they will know, you know, all that would have been taught to them. I don't know whether it's a teaching thing or whatever, but there is a lot of analytics, for instance, that we do now in HR, because there is a lot of data now available. I often find that the ability to use that data or make sense of that data to take even HR decisions is needs strengthening. That would really help me, because it will help you. The other expectation is the proactiveness. I'm saying they're agile, they're working, they are responding to changes. Maybe you can never predict everything, but you can actually try and proactively say, this is what the talent of the future, this is what the needs of the future will be, this is what the talent that I need in the future. You know, when we do business forecasting, we do some of that. Now, there's no such thing as a short term or a long term any longer. Everything, they're all the same. And so you're saying next year, 3 years, you at the most will forecast for some 3 years and say, because you don't know what's going to happen. Ability to do some of that proactively without being prodded or without being business led, you know, just pure sales led in that sense. I think that is something that I would like my CHRO to do. Other is that there is a lot of innovation in the across me that I see in smaller companies, in startup companies, in, you know, in young people's companies, that in the way talent is handled, hired, recruited, engaged, kept with, etc. I don't always see that. Maybe we are bound because, you know, some of us are multinational, large companies are bound, but I'm saying that a little more innovation in the way that talent is handled. I'm saying handled as whatever, but the way you manage talent, I think would be welcome. And I see that innovation elsewhere. Sometimes it does come from large companies. I've seen Unilever, I think Lina, who's an alumni of XLRI, is doing a fantastic job. There are others who are doing that. But there is learning. I would like more best practices to be shared across industries, across companies, so that we can learn from them. Yeah.
So you're saying HR analytics, you're saying about proactiveness, you're talking about innovation, and you're talking about more best practice sharing, especially from new age industries, which needs to come.
Right.
So Renu, do you want to add on to something?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, anything that any function does should be scalable, right? So even what works for a smaller or a mid-sized organization should work for the large, and vice versa, because in the end, it is about the structure, the process, and people, right? So if you have 20 people or 200, the entire journey of, you know, recruitment and making sure that they stay with you. So it's not only recruitment, so it's retention, it's recognition, rewards. The whole journey has to be obviously more innovative, because with data and with the millennial generation that we're all dealing with, they obviously have more exposure and more choices. So there has to be more excitement in what organization does. So when we go back to our experiences, you know, our journey was managed probably in a way that we could only look up vertically in our functions. Now, moving cross-function, moving horizontally, right? These should be options which should be pretty much embedded in our structure and process. So people should see the employer as open to experiment and learn. We keep talking about diversity and inclusion. I mean, it has to be really walk the talk. I mean, it should not be just because we want to put a tick on the box. And that's where it's reverse, where HR can set these processes, but then business has to own this, right, with the heart. So it's the other way around also. So you can go into a boardroom and say, my expectation is that our culture is trust, respect, and communication, transparency. But then as a leader, I have to live with that. And so does my CHRO and so does my business leader. So it's like a whole process, and your team, your employees all across the region, like I'm talking about MENA, which is very diverse in terms of languages, culture. We already work with 30 nationalities, right? So you have to make sure that you're living and your communication is, and that's where I think HR steps in strongly, that the need for communication to be understood in the same format with different people is so much more important. You have to be communicating to the last person who understands, and not only to your management team. So the choice of language, the choice of even simple, words, I'm probably getting into basics, but I saw that change in the whole organization, that when we could go through and make teams understand or where, where we're heading to. So starting from the objectives, the mission, the vision, and the top line, but where is your then career in line with that? That's very important. So for HR now, managing the career journey, to have them motivated to work long time and be incented to be with your organization, I mean, it's just beyond rewards, right? It's really beyond. So that has to also work. So while Preeti has mentioned about data, which is really utmost important, and we have talked about it, but I think the softer portion is which is gaining more and more importance in today's. That's right.
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and very well said, Renu. I mean, Samik, question back to you right now. Both the CEOs have said that they're looking at data, they're looking at people, they're looking at innovation, they're looking at agility, they're looking at scalability, and most important, they're looking at walking the talk and being the main custodian of the cultures. So, isn't that what anyways HR was anyways doing? So why is there this kind of a ask suddenly again? I mean, or is it changed, or is it something new which is coming? And Samik, you're on mute right now.
Sorry, I was no. I would say that there is a change, and the change is, I guess, in the intensity of what is being asked and the depth of what is being asked. And so earlier it was okay to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you got by. And as either Preeti or Renu said earlier, or I think Professor Guru said it, that the expectations of employees are also, evolving a lot, and therefore a lot of the demand is coming from that. But the point I wanted to make is that we have to also recognize that the HR function is a little different from most other functions, because even finance has a deliverable in itself. And once they get what they need, they are able to make the P&L, they're able to make the balance sheet, they're able to, go and publish the annual report, they are able to, go and discuss with the board or with the management of units, offices, whatever it might be, and do what they have to. In case of HR, it's much more about partnership, because finally the delivery has to happen through the line managers and HR. HR cannot, for example, if you want to hire differently, or you want to hire more, maybe quicker, or you want to hire very different profiles, it has to be a partnership between line and HR. And in which case, HR's job is to influence, HR's job is to provide the systems and processes, HR's job is to challenge, HR's job is to ask the right questions. And that takes a lot of capability and doing. And many times we expect that, the old HR organization, which had more operating capabilities, who were able to manage the strikes in the factories, who were able to, do what the administrative stuff that you needed to do for, let's say, the sales force or in the head offices, or who could, support managers, can also do this more strategic work in terms of first understanding the business, then asking those right questions. While we have invested in many organizations that I've seen a fair bit in senior talent, that, building this ability, particularly in large organizations, in the larger HR team, is not easy. And which is why I was saying that what will really enable us to change things on the ground is a much bigger investment in the HR organization itself in terms of becoming more data literate, being able to not just understand business, but go and ask those questions. I'll give you an example from my own company, current company, which is Hindalco. So earlier, we had one guy in managing all of sales HR for us. And why? Because you don't have many people in a B2B company in sales. Few people are able to do the job. But if you look at the complexity, we sell copper, we sell gold, we sell DAP, which is a fertilizer, we sell primary aluminium, we sell specialty chemicals, we sell extruded products, we sell rolled products. The customer base, the technology, the businesses you have to understand are completely different. So if the same guy, instead of now playing this support role, has to play this strategic role, he cannot do it because the mental bandwidth suddenly to develop is not possible. So you have to invest in both the capacity and the capability of the HR organization to enable some of this. And sometimes we miss out on some of those aspects, and we think that the world is changing, HR also has to change. And those are some of the aspects which we have to pay more attention to if we have to be able to really deliver on the ground some of what CEOs say, and I think CHROs also aspire to deliver. And some of it is happening, but it's not, I agree, it's not happening fast enough, it's not happening enough, it's not happening proactively enough. It can be much more proactive, it can be, much faster.
Samik, very, very nice example that you gave, and you also talked about, of course, the requirements have always been the same, but the change and the change in intensity and depth has actually changed. And also this entire, Renu also did talk about the investment in, in HR. So, Professor Guru, I mean, everybody now, both the CEOs and the CEOs.
I'll just add to both Reddy. I sort of interrupting you, but I sort of saw what the question you might ask. But what I'm trying to say is, one of the things I like what Renu just said, I think is very important, is that organizations are not what they claim to be doing, but what they actually do. And so she's essentially trying to focus on what do we do as an organization? So our employees want to judge by those activities. So that's an issue. And one area where I think, a CEO or even a CHR or HR, doesn't matter, is to clarify to the employees what we are as an organization. I mean, we don't have to, for example, I see organizations using words like trust so loosely, and we don't have to. We as far as we are who we are, I think employees today look for that honesty. They're saying, come on, just tell me who am I? I mean, what is my role here? What are the expectations? The clarity helps. Clarity helps right from the time you plan for the talent till the talent comes into the organization, expectations. So I think this clarity, I think, is a big issue, and that helps us So as Renu says, we should focus on what we do as an organization, in my opinion. I mean, I may have read it wrong, but that's one of the areas. And once we start talking about what we do as an organization, the metrics starts essentially changing to what we do, what we are, and how employees perceive what we do. So the metrics starts essentially changing. Where Samik is giving us the caution is that HR does not, so it's not so malleable that overnight you can essentially bring change. So that's the point. I think both the CEOs here would empathize with fully. The problem is that unlike, I'm not saying just, if you take branding also, right? You don't build brands overnight. So typically HR also don't build talent overnight. So the biggest challenge is you invest. And when you start investing and the factors are, today the cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. So what happens is there is a gap between what you want to deliver, how long it takes to deliver, and then you are struggling with where you are. And by the time you start delivering, there are the differences. There is changes in the business sometimes. There changes cycle. This is the CEO also. So these kind of changes, I think, goes back and gets into problems, and that's where I think we're all struggling with. Now, coming back to Preeti's point about the database decision making, one of the areas I think we academicians can be blamed probably is that it's not easy to pick at this point in time, data and connecting the data to the science behind the data, and then connecting it to what and isolating a particular area and then seeing whether it can essentially have a causal or an associative effect with any other business metric. This area is still emerging and we are still struggling. Sometimes the data seems to talk more. Sometimes we get swayed by some correlations. So sometimes we want to show to others that there is a correlation. Come on, see, I can read data. Let me just show it to you. But then the underlying science behind it has to be very carefully understood. We might be looking at false relationships. We might be measuring something because it's easy, but something else which is difficult to measure might be more important. So, but then when suddenly other functions are asking HR, hey, we have all data and we can show you something. So you're also forced to show something. And it becomes a competition, but taking in a very false direction. So I think that's where I think Samik is trying to bring a caution into the picture.
So I hear it. I mean, you're saying that, the business leader are asking for analytics. Samik is also saying, yeah, of course, you're doing certain things and suddenly you're asked to do 500 other things and then you want to be strategic, you want to be, how do you sort of manage that? So the need for investment in HR talent is also required, and the need for patience from also business leaders is required in, helping the individual and helping the entire department to also move forward to the new changing needs. So it is imperative that we need to be investing in our talent, and both, for all departments need to be supporting in their talent in sort of moving it forward.
So just to add one line, therefore the ask point that we are discussing, right? This will ask changes. So now you can't, as a CHRO or a HR person, just say, I don't have an answer. I still have to give you an answer. So then it becomes a different ballgame. Now I need to find out what answer I can give you for today. At the same time, build something for tomorrow. And then the expectations becomes complicated, and then your talent level required also increases. So then that's what I meant when I said the ask actually starts becoming higher, which is a very good thing, actually. If you see from HR's point of view, the challenges are lovely, frustrating, but lovely there. So.
No, but I think one thing which is very, very clearly coming out, and it's been endorsed by both the CEOs, is saying that, it's just not the HR's problem, right? It's our problem. It is a talent problem. It is an organization problem. We all need to do it together, and let's do it together. And why should it always be on the CHRO's shoulder or the HR department's shoulder? And I think that's interesting because, I've seen that, I've got about 20 plus years of experience in HR, and I've seen that shift happening, which is very, very good. So I just want to take, and there's a lot of questions on the audience side also, and I'm conscious of time. Renu, your question around DNI, which came in, and Anu Subramanian is asking, very interesting discussion, and I like the statement that Renu raised about DNI. As rightly said, is it DNI just a fashionable word, or are we putting this into practice? So I'm just saying, we're all talking, and you both, Preeti and Renu, have been managing different geographies and different countries, different people. So how do you actually get the DNI, the entire mix right, and what needs to be done? Is it? And of course, there is this entire thing around gender, which is always there. When people say DNI, it becomes gender, but it's not exactly only gender. So how do you manage that tightrope walk, and what do you expect from your CHROs or the HR leaders around that?
I think if I can take that one, I would say that you live this, right? So if you believe in this, then you will, consciously look at, specially abled, or you would look at gender diversity in your organization. And which is why it's important that you embed this in the culture, which means you and CHRO is talking to all business leaders together. Obviously, it's not so simple. And I will give you my experience from being in Middle East, where at least the women ratio which work is very, very less, right? And it's related to the culture of the region. But, going on consciously hiring women where you can, especially the countries where women were more forthcoming to take employment, sometimes they were not the best match. But then I always tell people that don't always look at resume for the companies or the experience they've worked in. It's also about the zeal and the passion that the candidate gets. And if you're ready to experiment with the incoming, generation, then you would gain much more, because then you can actually mold and groom them into the roles that you see in your organization. It does take a lot of effort, but nobody says that if somebody comes with from a large company with great experience is the best fit for the role. No, but there's no prescribed method, right? So what we did was we went ahead and hired students across countries. So from Ivory Coast, Senegal to Cyprus, Lebanon, I mean, every country that you can think of, at least 30 countries in my region, we went and hired students. So they come from different universities, different cultural backgrounds. So they are on the job, they're being trained. In a way, it's an experiment, but out of these 35 students that we have hired in the last, let's say, close to 1 year, a bit lesser, 3 have already been taken on the company payroll. They have finally landed up into roles. So that is where, and that's men and women alike. So that's also a form of diversity that you're trying to practice, right? So it's also about inclusion, trying to create a talent pipeline right from the scratch. So you move them, rotate them into different functions, sometimes just maybe it's just because you want them in sales because you're a very high sales focused organization. Maybe it's just marketing. But then what it opens up is that when they grow more with the organization, they're very available to move from a supply chain to a marketing to a sales and the HR and back forth. So
diversity of experience and functions. It's definitely
you have to do this consciously for your organization to see. And I think we are one of the regions within Grohe which is doing this very consciously. So I'm sure I'm going to create a best practice for somebody who can take it. Like it's like scalable, right? So if you have students in North and West Africa, they speak French as well. So they have obviously an option to go to Europe. Let's say France, right? So you're creating a talent pool not only for your own region, but also for other regions within your organization. So that's what I said. It has to be scalable. So it took us a lot of time to conceptualize, set up KPIs. So we have a weekly KPI management. So I know that somebody asked that question of how do you do this? We have actually 2 students managing 35 students KPI. We have manager interventions. It's a full-blown A3 size Excel sheet. If you in a printout, if you want to see it. But that's what you want to do because if you want to do this, then go full out and do it, right? So there is no halfway solution.
Sure. Preeti, you would want to say something because I also wanted to get into the diversity of functions. So now the entire thing of, in fact, Radha Aluwale is also there. She's messaged on the group saying, couldn't agree more with Renu. The success of the CHRO office in turn will also lie in seeing if there is lateral movement possible, which encourages HR leaders to move into other roles and other leaders to move into HR roles. Now, because, and can HR be the go-to function discussion for most of the business leaders to come into? Is that happening right now? And if it's not happening, why is it not happening?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
So no, actually, it's interrelated, and it comes from Renu, the IND thing as well, because there is gender diversity. There is we take IND very, very seriously. We have a whole set of activities that we're doing, and it has to be driven from the top. It has to be seen as something that the CEO is passionate about, and you have to believe in it. And, because people can find out if you're just doing it because, to do a tick mark, or you actually believe in it. You believe in it because it really makes for a better organization. Diversity does make for a better organization. You get far more innovative thinking. So there is gender diversity that we work on. We also work on other things like sexual orientation, ethnicity. All of that is also part of the diversity agenda that we have, and we're working on various things that we do, practices that we have to have that make that happen. But diversity of function as well. In fact, some of the best CHROs that I have met are people who came from the business or spent time in the business and then took on the CHRO role, or basically said that I'm going to take 2 years off or whatever to actually because it shows an investment by the organization and it shows an investment by the person in their career, right? And I don't think that I think it's if we can manage that, if we can rotate that, if we can say that you spend some time in HR and see what they have to handle, and finance or whatever. So that rotation of job functions is something that we encourage. I don't know if we do it as much and as well as we should, but it's very much something that I think an organization should do, because it just makes for better professionals, more well-rounded professionals, and you understand each other's problems much better than And CFO is not always then saying the CHRO doesn't know anything, and the CHRO is not saying the CFO is holding me back. They understand each other's issues far better. I think that diversity of experience, quite apart from gender and all of the others, is important.
So Samik, coming back to you, I mean, in terms of, of course, there's lots of strides that organizations in the country currently are doing around diversity, and of course, a lot of work around gender diversity. But the gender diversity around functions and, sort of moving across fungibility around organizations. I know a couple of FMCG companies, and you've been there. I know Unilever does it very well, where they actually, sort of get everybody from every department, for the first 2-3 years, they actually go and work in plants, they go and work in sales, they work in, and they come back and, they actually become true leaders. So do you think this is something which needs to be practiced across organizations where there is a business stint, irrespective of what organization you are, what function you are in and how it goes? Just wanted to ask from your talent management perspective.
No, I mean, it's obvious that if you can do more of it, it's going to help. But today we are not able to do enough of this cross-functional movement, even for high potential talent. I mean, in our high potential talent development programs, we do not have enough structured cross-functional movements built in. And the benefits are obvious. So the question actually back to us should be, why is it not happening? And I mean, I can only hypothesize on that. I think we have to, push it and make it happen with a few, and create role models, and then more will happen. So my current managing director, Satish Pai, who was with Schlumberger for 27 years, he actually worked 4 years in HR before he took on the...
Sorry, I think we lost him.
management job and early in his career. So,
your voice is coming and going. It's fine now. Speak, Samik.
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is fine now.
Okay. So I'll just see. I'll just give 1 second. I'll just.
Okay. I think he's frozen. So, Professor Guru, I mean, in this, I know the couple of the CHRO programs which are happening in XLRI, and there are a lot of people from outside of HR who are willing to, sort of come and learn the HR ropes. Do you think there is a trend changing around this? Sorry, Samik, I'm just asking one specific question.
That's fine. Yeah, there was some internet issue. I'm back now, so I can come back in after this.
Yes, you have something to say, Samik, complete your answer or something? So before
there were two parts to what Rashmi was asking. So I was saying that I have seen it working very well in some cases, but again, we are not doing enough of it now. One of the reasons is that something like this which is very different from what we've done in the past. Somebody has to push, make it happen for some time, and then you create role models, and then it starts happening. So we have to do more of that. But in the cases where it has happened, I have clearly seen the benefits, and I've seen quite a few leaders like that. So I'm a believer, but even I have not been able to make it happen a lot. And one of the reasons possibly is that sometimes the credibility of the HR function can be a blocker, and how other functions or line functions look at HR, and therefore what value a stint in HR could do it could be an impediment in some cases. But the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. So if we can make a few happen and it works, then I personally believe it will pick up. It's like in the case of, we talked a lot about diversity. In the case of inclusion, finally people will believe you are an inclusive culture if they see you practicing what you say. So we have been hiring a lot of young engineers. Out of 600 odd we've hired in the last 4 years, maybe 20-25%, about 20-23% are women. So we've suddenly put a lot of women on the shop floor. So things like prevention of sexual harassment, etc., has become very important. And those cases are coming up. Earlier we didn't have enough women, so that didn't come up. But what has helped us to get credibility, for example, is the fact that in some difficult cases, so there was, and in India, these kind of things happen. There was a nephew of a chief secretary who was hired because he was referred, who was actually sexually harassing a woman and saying nobody can do anything to me. And we actually went back to that chief secretary, spoke to him and sacked that guy. And so that helped create credibility for us. So I'm using a slightly different example because we were talking about both these topics. But finally, when we make a few things happen, I think people start believing and then more and more of it can happen. So that's the point.
So you talked about walking the talk. Renu is talking about walking the talk. So Professor Guru, I was talking about saying that, if you want to be looking at more diversity in roles and functions, do you see there's an uptake of people outside of the HR function wanting to do HR programs?
Yeah, especially in these programs that we do currently, the EMDP programs, we call them, where we do over the online medium. We do see a lot of people who are getting into the HR field from other functions. Of course, I haven't done a good analysis of at which level in the career where they are switching, etc. But many of them are coming in and they're enriching the program because they are talking a lot about this. Of course, I don't think anybody is not in HR, right? You are either managing HR or you are in
managing
HR.
People.
Yeah, you are in the organization. You are with people all the time. So especially if you're not in HR, you understand HR better sometimes because you know what has been done to you. So you come back and talk with more clarity. So we actually find such discussions in the classroom to be very enriching, and we find today is a beautiful day era to teach. You in your classroom you have entrepreneurs, you have startup employees, you have people from established organizations, and all of them clashing with each other saying, Prof, that looks nice, but it won't help in my organization. And as a prof, you are challenged. It's so nice to discuss. So we are actually, enjoying such kind of diversity. I don't think we really planned for it so very well, but we are getting the diversity and we are enjoying it. And I think the only people, I don't know about the students, but profs seems to be learning a lot actually.
I think if it's a diverse group, we learn from each other so much.
And they learn from each other a lot. That's definitely there. And we look for this diversity. I think going forward, this whole discussion of diversity is a very complex area to get into. So I don't want to go beyond this, but one of the points I just want to help Samik get into one of the issues is that this whole cross-functional movement, it's easy for a prof to teach, but it is not easy to implement it's very expensive. It can get expensive. It can send the wrong signals to the organization. Somebody might be thinking, come on, maybe this is not my career anymore. Or somebody might actually be waiting to move to that level and somebody else might come from there. So you need to be very careful to the signal with the signals you are sending. Are you doing it as an one-off thing? Or are you doing it as a system? Is it going to be sustainable? So these are very careful areas. Of course, MNCs have taught, some of the MNCs have done it so beautifully. They have explained, but they also went through that process. In India, I think we are in that stage where we're experimenting with it, but we must admit that in areas where tenure and careers are already shorter, cross-functional movements can have unintended consequences, which creates pressure. Some organizations start and suddenly they feel, okay, it's ruffling the feathers of someone else and they withdraw. Just to empathize with what Samik is trying to essentially bring about.
The great point, Professor Guru. So, Samik, you've heard everybody, and you've heard the investment and the we need to be doing in all our talent, and we also heard about from the CEO saying that we need to be having a much more collaborative approach towards talent. So, what would your ask be as a CHRO? As an HR leader from the business to make the HR function much more relevant to the entire business?
So I would say that, every organization has many tops. It's not just the CEO. And we need ownership of the people agenda at a much broader level, which is why it has to be a mindset, it has to be a culture. And the CEO and the CHRO has to work together on that. So now I've seen CEO and the CHRO having that mindset, that belief, but especially in a large organization, even that is not enough. That's a good starting point. It's a great starting point. Without that, you can't do it. But then that investment has to be made in, making that organization-wide thing. And there, it's a question of how do you choose your leaders. When you're choosing your leaders, are you choosing people who are operationally great and delivering the numbers, or are you also asking how is their people management record? Are they developing people? Do we have good feedback about them in their 360s, in their Manager Connect scores? Do they have good safety records? What else are they doing? I mean, when we choose our leaders, we have to choose wisely if we have to make this an organization-wide culture. And that's what CEOs and CHROs can do much more of than perhaps we are doing today. Because when it comes to the bottom line, very often we finally say that, okay, but finally business is about delivering numbers. And we go with the people who are able to deliver those numbers, whether they can or cannot do the other stuff.
Beautiful, Samik. Yes, so one of the points I would not have brought it much.
Any pointers, Renu and Preeti, on Samik's viewpoint?
I think I would say, I mean, there was one of the questions also, and what Samik is going in the direction is, in the end, I mean, there is a performance KPI, right? So if the business does not meet its sales and profit targets, no investment can happen. So, I mean, so profit is no longer a cuss word, right? So you need that to invest back in the business, into your marketing, into your people, right? Everything. So it's important that people meet their KPIs, but you have to be agreeing to the fact that when people make transitions from one function to another, it may not in the first year give you the same results. Let's say if somebody comes with an experience to that role. So as an organization, if you're willing to invest in it, you should be ready to have a KPI, 2 or a 3 year format, and be ready to make sure that you've invested in the person by way of experience on the job, by way of even professional courses. I mean, that's very important to learn something which you have not, right? And then you should see the evolvement of KPIs. More and more KPIs are long-term today, except, I mean, I would say sales and profit, and I come back to it, but everything else is a bit more long-term than 1 year. And we should be ready to make sure that the team that the person is in is also in, enabling that. That's where the culture becomes very important. So you have to have that. I mean, I moved from being a CFO to a CEO with literally no training, but I guess my organization had a lot of patience in me that I could deliver results, right? So in the end, you need to have more and more people who are living examples of this. Then you believe in it and you practice it. So I think that's also another way of looking at it.
Great. Preeti, your perspective?
Yeah, I actually loved Samik's point, I think, about the fact that, or Professor also, I think, reiterated that at some point you have to make there's a compromise or there's a trade-off, because you to do something, but performance and sales, etc., forces you to do something else. And I'm saying that maybe it's no longer a trade-off. It is, performance has to include both how you handle people and how you handle clients and how you handle a business. Otherwise, you're not, we call them in our business, we call them spiky leaders who do one thing well and not another thing well. If you have aspirations of being a leader, CEO or just a business leader, whatever, you have to be able to manage and do different things at different times, and be able to look at what is the trade-off that you have to make at this point in time. What do you reward for? And what do you penalize for in a business? And that you have to show spine, you know what I mean? Both the CHRO and the CEO and the CFO together have to show spine to say that we are behind this. We need performance, we need money, we need profit, but it can't be at the cost of something else, because that something else will come back and bite you at some point.
So nicely said. CHRO, CFO, and CEO needs to show spine. So any last words from all of you, and then I will hand it over to Kashish to do the closing for this session. Guru, last words from you.
I'm very, first of all, happy to see that CEOs, CHROs getting together and discussing this. So I think we are just beginning in this journey. There's a lot more. Next 6 or 7 years, we're going to see a lot of differences in the way we speak. I think we should all meet just 6 years from now, just see how differently we are essentially speaking. I just want to, however, say, yes, the biggest change that is probably happening is we are getting CEOs who are sensitive to the long term. And therefore, I think this is going to make our break, right? Any CHRO needs that kind of CEO. That's probably what Samik was getting into. And that's going to be, that's what I'm just trying to say, is that if you get such CEOs, HR can do wonders.
Beautiful. Renu?
I'd still say that, communication has to be an utmost and topmost, let's say, role that everybody as functional leaders, so CEO, CHRO, CFO combined, should be playing, because it's important that people understand what we discuss in boardrooms. That's very, very important and very key. And like we always say, like culture can eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you can do whatever you want in boardrooms. Only your culture defines whether it can really be executed. So live it up. So that's very important.
That's so nicely said. Samik, your take. Last few words.
Nothing further to add, really. I kind of echo what Renu said about culture, in the sense that the kind of business environment we are in today and the rate at which the world is changing, culture has become even more critical. That you have to now be conscious of your culture, understand your culture, and be able to evolve it as you go along. So that's a very big leadership imperative, in which that triangle of the CEO, CFO, CHRO becomes very pivotal. Of course, the entire leadership team actually has to drive it together. I mean, while CEO, CFO, CHRO can play a pivotal role, the entire leadership team, all the CXOs have to be a big part of this.
So the messaging is very clear, come together. And like Preeti said, all of us need to come together and have spine together. So any last words before I hand it to Kashish, Preeti?
No, I think we've delightfully agreed with each other. I think we have to see how to make that happen. And I would just, this is really for Professor, I would just urge that we look at how we are training our people, and what, how do we bring the practicality into what we're doing, and in terms of getting our new people, our graduates, etc., ready for the world of business, and how can we accelerate that learning.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, and that's our objective also, to get them ready.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Kashish, and thank you for organizing this entire webinar. It is the core HRIR group who is actually being the platform for inviting all the participants. Over to you, Kashish.
Thanks, Rashmi. It's an honor to be present here on this occasion, where we have had the honor to tie up with the XLRI and be a part of such a insightful discussion with all the panelists. So I'll start with thanking all the panelists who have taken out so much of their valuable time and to contribute to the learning and development of the HR professionals, as well as some of the students who have joined us for this webinar. So I would like to thank Ms. Preeti Reddy, Ms. Renu Misra, Mr. Samik Basu, and Dr. L. Gurunathan. And of course, this thank note cannot be complete without thanking Rashmi, who's been there and been coordinating, been moderating the entire panel discussion. So I would just probably talk for 2 minutes about what we are as a GRO. I've been a part of this fantastic journey with core HRIR almost since the inception of the GRO, which was basically in January 2017. And ever since we started, so we will be almost completing 5 years in 2022. But these 4.5 years have been very fruitful and successful in bringing the group in line to the vision of the founders. So our mission has always been to contribute and be that one-stop platform for the HR professionals to learn and grow, share knowledge, be one-stop platform for mentoring and futuristic point of view for the HR professionals as well as the organizations overall. So we took about 6 to 7 initiatives in line to our vision. So it's not important to mention all of them, but yes, some of the core initiatives that we did take up were the Learning Weekend, wherein we invited some of the top HR leaders and stalwarts to share their knowledge and experience and help the younger generation grow. We came up with our very own version of HR Conclave, which we called Chai Buddy. So we did approximately 3 to 4 conferences before COVID happened. And then, of course, we switched over to virtual webinars like the rest of the world. And we also came up with Core Connect, which enabled all the HR professionals to be connected to each other, brainstorming on different challenges being experienced by HR professionals all over the world, right? One of our very proud initiative and collaboration is with HRCI, where HRCI is kind of sponsoring the some of the programs in terms of the credit that people can utilize for furthering their HR careers or HR certifications. So that's there, of course. And then Career Center is one of our biggest achievements, I would say. It is an automated application tracking system. And we have been working with some of the big names in the industry in terms of providing them the HR talent that they need. And it is completely free. It's completely free of cost, because the concept of Core HRIR was to be always a non-profit organization dedicated to growing of the HR community internationally. And I believe we are pretty close to achieving that. So again, another proud moment is our today's tie-up with XLRI, one of the big brands in the, I would say, the education industry, not just in India, but overseas as well. So I myself am an alumni of XLRI, though what I did certainly was a certification program of 6 months in strategic performance management. But that itself was very, very enlightening. So to everyone who's currently listening to this, but who has been a part of this particular webinar, I would really encourage to go ahead and be a part of our growing network of Core HRIR, as well as XLRI. And I'm really proud to say that XLRI has the same vision as Core HRIR, which is basically helping the HR community grow. And they have come up with this postgraduate executive diploma in HR for CHROs in the making. I'm sure this is going to be one of a very contributive and knowledge enhancing and a breakthrough in careers for HR fraternity over here. So I wish everyone all the best, and thanks once again for collaborating with us, Rashmi, and thanks once again all the speakers and for making out time. It was great having you and being a part of this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, speakers, and thank you so much for taking out your Saturday morning in sort of spending time with us. There are a couple of questions here which have come from the audience. We might just reach out to you, separately to take your answers so that we can get back to all the participants. Thank you so much, and really appreciate the time.